Picture this. You're standing right there on the stage at the National Spelling Bee. The microphone is adjusted perfectly to your height, the judges are just staring you down from their table, and the pronouncer hands you this massive 14-letter monster of a word that you have literally never seen in your life. Well, I'm your host, and I am stepping onto that stage right alongside you today. I've got a giant magnifying glass in hand, and my trusty digital assistant, WordBot, is here too. We are ready to investigate this giant word together.
So your heart rate spikes, right? Your palms start getting a little sweaty? Do you panic? Well, absolutely not. Not if you're a champion. You see, elite spellers don't look at words as just these random strings of individual letters that you somehow have to memorize by sheer brute force. Nope, they have a secret weapon, and it completely changes the game.
All right, let's dive into what this secret weapon actually is. Elite competitors look at words almost like biological organisms, complete with their own distinct genetic codes. They rely heavily on something called morphology, and that's just a fancy term for the scientific study of the forms and structures of words. Champions use morphology to surgically dissect those giant, intimidating words on the fly, right there under the bright stage lights. In today's Explainer, we're kicking off your ultimate mini course on a Tier 1, super high-yield Greek root. This one single root anchors over 120 different words in competitive spelling banks. So, grab your notebook, because our buddy WordBot has the foundational equation for this root, and you'll want to write this right at the top of the page. AER equals air, gas, or atmosphere. Seriously, if you want to move past your local school bees and actually dominate at the national level, this root is an absolute must-have asset. Think of it as your personal shield against classic phonetic traps, weird silent vowel combinations, and super confusing double root connections.
Now, we do have to navigate the phonology here, basically how the sounds of this root behave, because honestly, they can be incredibly tricky. When you put this root into English compounds, it undergoes these pronunciation shifts that consistently trip up amorous spellers. In simpler words, like Ariel, it slides really smoothly into just a single monosyllabic sound. But in more technical terms, like aerate, those vowels actually split apart into a trisyllabic glide. Picture WordBot grabbing that trisyllabic word and stretching it out like a rubber band. When you hear that shifting, stretched-out vowel sound on stage, your brain has to automatically convert it back to its core architectural spelling, which is AER.
So, here is our master plan to completely destroy any giant word. We're going to cover 1. The story of the root. 2. The invisible ocean. 3. The 4 variants. 4. 10 hidden forms. And finally, our champion checklist. Let's jump right into part 1. The story of the root. To truly master any root, you've got to understand its etymology. We need the historical narrative of how this exact word traveled across time and across continents to land in our modern dictionaries. The journey kicks off way back in 400 BCE in ancient Greece. But here's a really fascinating secret for you. To the ancient Greeks, the word air didn't just mean any random pocket of sky. It specifically meant the dense, low atmosphere, that heavy, muddy mist hovering right near the ground. And they contrasted this sharply with aether, which was the bright, golden, completely pure upper air that was breathed exclusively by the gods up on Mount Olympus. Now, moving along our timeline to 100 CE, the Romans adopted the word into Latin as AER. Over the centuries, as empires fell, linguistic erosion started trimming the word down. So by 1066 CE, the French had eroded it into our everyday word AIR. But wait a second, if the spelling eroded to AIR, why in the world do advanced spelling bee words use AER? Well, look at the 19th century. During the scientific revolution, all these brilliant inventors and mad scientists felt the everyday word air just sounded way too simple. So they literally marched straight back to ancient Greek manuscripts and resurrected the pure Neo-Greek AER to mint their brand new scientific compounds. That is exactly why simple everyday words use AIR, but elite competition words use AER. All right, moving right along to part 2, the invisible ocean. To make sure you never misapply this root when you're trying to guess definitions on stage, I want you to lock a very specific mental picture into your long-term memory. Just imagine a cartoon lobster, or maybe a crab, crawling around at the absolute pitch-black bottom of a massive ocean of liquid water, constantly having to adjust to the fluid dynamics around it. Well, guess what? You and I are doing the exact same thing every single time we walk down the sidewalk. We live at the very bottom of a massive, swirling, fluid ocean of invisible gas. The atmosphere is literally a physical fluid wrapping around the entire Earth.
And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates our next point.
Every single complex AER word connects back to moving through or somehow manipulating this invisible fluid. Think about it. When a massive airplane cuts through the sky, it has to master the forces of this fluid. That's aerodynamics. When a tiny bacterium requires the gases of this ocean just to survive, we call it aerobic. When a scientist maps out the atmospheric currents, they are practicing areography. And when brilliant engineers create this crazy ultralight solid by replacing the liquid inside a gel with pure atmospheric gas, they create an aerogel. It always tracks back to the physics of this invisible ocean.
Okay, on to part 3, the 4 root variants.
We are officially entering the structural engineering phase of this explainer. Imagine WordBot operating a giant crane right now, dropping massive architectural blocks onto a conveyor belt. As a national tier competitor, you have to know that this root actually alters its appearance based entirely on the letters attached to its tail. First up is the pure Greek base, ARO, which we use when connecting to vowel-starting suffixes, like in aerial or aerate. Second is aero. Now, in Greek morphology, when you stack 2 major roots together, you almost always insert the connecting vowel O. This gives us a word like aeronaut, which literally blends aero with the Greek root for sailor, so tiny air sailors. Third, we have the Latinized hybrid variant, air-I. When Roman frameworks were used, that connecting vowel flipped from an O to a Latin I, standing tall like a Roman column. This gives us highly technical words like aerify. And finally, the fourth variant is just AR, our everyday eroded French-derived noun that you see in simple words like aircraft.
So, because of all that, we arrive at a massive warning. You have to watch out for the vowel glide trap. This is literally the absolute #1 reason really smart spellers get knocked out on this route. In words like aerate or aerial, the pronunciation makes the vowels blend together. Amateur spellers hear that AER sound and they immediately write down AIR or AR, spelling it ARATE or aerial. And guys, that is an instant ding on the judge's bell and a very long, very sad walk off the stage. So here is our shared rule of thumb. If the word sounds scientific, academic, or medical, we must mentally isolate that core Greek block and confidently write down AER before adding a single other syllable.
Let's step it up to part 4, 10 hidden root forms.
Let's really lean into our elite champion training. The highest-ranked spellers in the world can spot a root even when it's wearing a really heavy disguise. Think of this like a detective board. Let's look at the first 5 suspects. Aura comes straight from the ancient Greek word for a gentle moving breath of air. Malaria is super fascinating. It breaks down into the Latin mal for bad and the Italian aria. But why bad air? Because centuries ago, doctors firmly believed this deadly disease was literally caused by breathing in guilty, toxic swamp gas. Aerobe is our root slammed directly into bios, meaning air life. Ether is that pure high atmosphere of the gods we talked about earlier, often hiding behind the British AE ligature. And arterial, get this. Ancient Greek physicians dissecting bodies found that the blood had drained out of the arterial tubes. Finding them totally empty, they incorrectly concluded that arteries were just empty bone tubes meant to pump air. It's like finding a tiny sailboat inside a skeleton.
Let's round out the detective board with the final 5 hidden forms. Weather is a really deep historical cognate that traces all the way back to ancestral roots for blowing wind. Ventilate stems from the Latin ventus, which also means wind. Now look closely at aerated. WordBot is aggressively waving a red warning flag for us here. The pronunciation literally forces you to articulate 3 distinct vowel sounds back to back. Air, a, tid. Whatever you do, never drop that hidden internal E. Then there's midair, which denotes a very specific geometric point suspended right inside our invisible ocean. And finally, aerosol is this brilliant engineering portmanteau fusing aero with sol, which is just short for a solution. It literally translates to an air solution, exactly like the fine mist shot out of a spray can.
And finally, we arrive at part 5, the champion checklist.
Let's just quickly run through our final checklist to confirm your total mastery of this elite toolkit. Picture WordBot hovering right beside us on a jetpack, confidently checking off boxes on a golden clipboard. Step 1. Can you define the root AER? Yes, you can. Air, gas, or atmosphere. Step 2. Can you identify the 4 core variants? Yep. AER, AORO, ARE, and AR. Step 3. Can you spot its hidden forms inside tricky disguised words like malaria or arterial? Absolutely. And step 4. Can you completely bypass the phonetic vowel glide trap on stage? Yes, for sure, because you now understand the exact structural anatomy needed to dissect these giants.
We've honestly covered a tremendous amount of ground in this explainer today, but you know what? This is really just the beginning. I want you to remember the simple, powerful mnemonic slogan. When you see AER, think air. In our next session, we're going to step directly inside the primary vocabulary lab to master even more high-yield words built entirely on this route. But as you walk away today, I want to leave you with one provocative thought. Look around you right now at that swirling, invisible ocean of fluid you are currently submerged in. What other invisible words do you think are hiding in the air you breathe right now? Keep your eyes open, and I will see you on the stage.